You've seen the claims. This penny is worth $1 million. This quarter can make you rich overnight. But is it true? The truth is, most of it is completely fake. Exaggerated prices, misleading hype. That's what we're here to expose. Welcome to Rare Coin Collecting.
When collectors talk about key date pennies, the 1931 Lincoln Wheat cent is always near the top of the list. At first glance, it looks just like any other wheat penny. The familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, and the two wheat stalks on the back. But don't let its ordinary appearance fool you. This coin is one of the scarcest regular issues of the entire wheat cent series, and it's a coin that every serious collector hopes to add to their collection. Let's step back into history. By 1931, the United States was in the depths of the Great Depression. The stock market had crashed in 1929. Unemployment was skyrocketing, and everyday Americans were struggling to make ends meet. Because the economy was so weak, people simply weren't spending much, and the demand for coinage dropped dramatically. The San Francisco Mint struck only 866,000 pennies that year, an incredibly low number compared to the billions of cents produced in other years. To put that in perspective, many modern pennies have mintages in the billions, while even in the early wheat cent years, mintages usually ran into the tens of millions. That's why 1931 is such a famous low mintage key date. Collectors recognized its scarcity almost immediately. In fact, unlike many other rare coins that only gained value decades later, people in the 1930s already knew the 1931 was special. Dealers began saving rolls and collectors put aside examples in higher grades. That means while it's scarce in absolute numbers, it's actually more available in mint state than you might expect. But that doesn't make it cheap. Demand for this key date has only grown over time. Now let's talk value. In circulated condition, a 1931 penny usually sells for $75 to $125, even if it's heavily worn. A nice fine or very fine example can bring $200 or more, but the real excitement comes in the higher grades. An uncirculated red-brown example can easily top $1,000, while blazing red uncirculated coins are true prizes. The highest auction records are stunning. One example, graded PCGS MS67, red sold for over $18,000 at auction. That's $18,000 for a penny, thanks to condition and rarity. But like every valuable coin, it comes with warnings. Counterfeits of the 1931 exist, and many ordinary 1931 Philadelphia cents have had fake mint marks added. The difference between a $2 coin and a $500 coin is often just that little letter S below the date. That's why authentication and grading by trusted services like PCGS or NGC is so important. For collectors looking to buy a 1931 penny, there are two main strategies. If you're working on a wheat penny collection and just want a solid example, a circulated but problem-free coin is the way to go. They're still pricey, but much more affordable than high-grade examples. But if you're investing, or you want a coin that will hold its value long-term, you should focus on certified mint state coins, especially those with strong original red color. Those are the ones that consistently command attention at auctions. And when it comes to selling, don't rush. If you've inherited a 1931 or found one in an old collection, the temptation is to clean it up and make it shine. But here's where we have to stress: never clean your coins. Cleaning destroys originality and can cut the value in half or worse. Collectors pay premiums for originality, even if the coin looks a little dirty or toned. If you're not sure how to handle it, the best move is to leave it untouched and let a professional, grader or dealer advise you. So where do people actually find coins like this? The truth is, most 1931 pennies are already in collector hands. But discoveries still happen. Some show up in old coin jars, passed down from grandparents who saved their change in the 1930s. Others surface in estate sales, auctions, and flea markets. And believe it or not, a few are still pulled from old bank-wrapped wheat penny rolls. That's why roll hunters, estate sale hunters, and dedicated coin searchers never stop looking. The 1931 penny is more than just a collectible. It's a symbol of its time. A coin born during one of the hardest economic chapters in American history. It reminds us of a period when every cent truly mattered, when the mint produced far fewer coins, because people were struggling to use the ones they already had. Owning a 1931 penny is like holding a piece of that history in your hand. And remember, rarity isn't just about how many coins were made. It's about how many survive and in what condition. The 1931 is rare in absolute numbers, but even rarer in pristine blazing red condition. That's why collectors continue to chase it, why auction records keep climbing, and why it remains one of the most respected key dates in the Wheat Cent series. So whether you're searching through rolls, checking your family's old coin jars, or saving up to buy a certified example, the 1931 Lincoln Wheat Cent deserves your attention. It's a coin that tells a story, carries real value, and belongs in every serious collection. And here on Rare Coin Collecting, we'll keep sharing these stories, because every great collection starts with knowledge, and who knows, the next rare treasure could be waiting in your very own drawer. Have you ever thought that a single penny, something you might walk past on the street, could actually be worth a fortune? Well, buckle up, because today on Rare Coins, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating stories in American numismatics, the 1944 Lincoln Wheat Penny. Now, at first glance, this coin doesn't seem special. Billions were minted, right? So how could it possibly be rare? The truth is, the story of the 1944 penny is not about what was common, but about the mistakes, the accidents, and the few surviving treasures that can sell for tens of thousands of dollars. And in some cases, well over $100,000 at auction. Let's rewind to World War II. In 1943, the U.S. Mint made pennies out of steel coated with zinc because copper was needed for the war effort. That was a drastic shift. Americans were shocked to see silvery pennies in their change. By 1944, the war was winding down, and copper was available again. So the Mint switched back to making pennies out of copper, technically a bronze alloy. But here's the twist. Some leftover steel planchets from 1943 accidentally made their way into the presses in 1944. That's how we got the famous 1944 steel penny, a mistake so rare that only a few dozen are known today. These are the superstars of the series, and when they come up at auction, they can fetch life-changing money. For example, in a 2018 Heritage auction, a 1944 steel penny graded MS-64 sold for nearly $180. True to another one, in top condition, has been rumored to approach $200,000. That's right, a penny worth more than a luxury sports car. The rarity isn't in the standard 1944 copper pennies. Those were produced in the billions across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The rarity lies in mint errors and special conditions. 1944 steel penny, accidental leftover planchets. 1944 D's over mint mark, where a Denver mint mark was punched over a San Francisco one. 1944 doubled dies, where lettering shows strong doubling. High-grade copper cents, especially those that survived in uncirculated red luster. Collectors prize these varieties, and even normal 1944 pennies can be valuable in mint. State condition. A red luster 1944 for example, sold for over $10,000 at auction. One of the best things about the 1944 penny is the auction drama that surrounds it. Imagine being the seller who found one of these steel cents in a cigar box, or the collector who spotted it in pocket change decades ago. In one famous case, a teenager reportedly found a 1944 steel cent in his lunch money. Years later, he auctioned it off for 5 figures. In another, a Denver minted 1944 steel penny in MS-66 condition sold for nearly $115,000. Stories like this fuel the imagination and make every day people check their change with fresh eyes. So let's talk collecting strategy. If you're trying to buy a rare 1944 penny, you'll want to 1. Buy from reputable dealers or auctions, because counterfeits are out there. 2. Look for third-party grading at PASIGES and NGC. Certifications are essential for high-value coins. 3. Set your budget wisely. Not every 1944 penny is worth a fortune, but the right one can be an investment. And if you're planning to sell, timing matters. Auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and great collections often create bidding wars when rare errors appear. A coin that might sell for $20,000 privately could fetch double under the right spotlight. So some grading and cleaning. Now this is crucial. Grading can make or break your coin's value. The difference between an MS-63 and an MS-66 penny can be tens of thousands of dollars. That's why sending your coin to PCGS or NGC is often worth the cost. And cleaning? Let me be clear, never clean your coin. Even if you think you're making it shine, you're actually destroying original surfaces and reducing the value dramatically. Collectors want originality, even if the coin looks a little dirty. A shiny, cleaned penny might only be worth face value, while a natural, slightly worn coin could be worth hundreds. So where to find them? Now here's where the treasure hunting gets fun. People have found 1944 rarities in all kinds of places. Old piggy banks passed down from grandparents. Estate sales where jars of pennies sell for a few dollars. Coin rolls from the bank, yes, even today. Collectors hunt rolls hoping for a jackpot. Forgotten dresser drawers or coffee tins where coins sat for decades. And trust me, and these stories aren't myths. We know because we once started just like you. Digging through coins, not knowing what was rare. Wasting time until we finally found that first treasure. It changed everything for us. And now we're here sharing those secrets with you. So the next time you come across a 1944 penny, look closely. Is it steel? Is it a double die? Is it in pristine, untouched condition? That little coin could be your ticket to thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And remember, here on Rare Coins, we're not just showing you history, we're guiding you through a treasure hunt. In upcoming videos, we'll cover even more legendary pennies, including the 1943 copper cent and the 1955 double die, coins that have turned ordinary people into overnight success stories. Stay with us, because your next rare coin might just be sitting in your change jar right now. When people talk about the holy grails of U.S. coin collecting, one coin always comes up, the 1943 Lincoln penny. At first glance, it may look like any ordinary cent, but this little coin has made headlines, sparked treasure hunts across America, and even changed people's lives overnight. The story begins during World War II. America needed every bit of copper for ammunition and wartime equipment. To save resources, the U.S. Mint made a dramatic change and produced pennies from steel coated in zinc. That's why in 1943, Americans were surprised to see shiny, silver-looking pennies instead of the usual brown copper coins. But here's where it gets fascinating. A small number of 1943 pennies were accidentally struck on leftover copper planchets from 1942. The mint workers didn't notice at the time, and the coin slipped into circulation. Today, those copper pennies from 1943 are among the rarest and most valuable coins ever produced in the United States. Only about 24 authentic examples are known to exist. Imagine billions of steel pennies being made, and just a handful of copper ones slipping through. That's what makes these coins legendary. Collectors all over the world still dream of finding one, checking every old jar of coins and every inherited collection in hopes of spotting that unmistakable reddish-brown copper, cent dated 1943. When we talk about their value, the numbers will blow your mind. In 2010, a Denver minted 1943 copper penny sold privately for $1.7 million. Another example, graded MS-63 by PCGS, crossed the auction block in 2018 for just over $1.8 million. Even circulated examples, coins that clearly passed through people's hands at grocery stores and bus stops, have sold in the range of $100,000 to $250,000. Think about that for a second. 1 cent meant to be pocket change, now worth more than luxury cars or even a house. Of course, most 1943 pennies you'll see are the steel versions. They are collectible in their own right, but worth much less. A circulated 1943 steel penny usually brings about 10 to 50 cents, while uncirculated examples can reach $20 to $50, depending on the grade. The key is that only the copper versions carry that life-changing value. Collectors often ask, how can you tell if you have a real 1943 copper penny? The first test is simple. Grab a magnet. Steel cents will stick, copper ones will not. Another important point is color. Copper cents look brown or reddish, while steel cents look gray or silvery. But be careful because many counterfeits exist. Some people plate steel cents with copper, or alter 1948 copper cents to look like 1943 by filing down the number. That's why professional grading is so important. If you think you might have the real deal, sending it to PCGS or NGC is the only way to be sure. For collectors and treasure hunters, the dream of finding a 1943 copper cent is alive and well. These coins have turned up in pocket change, in old coffee cans, and even in desk drawers. Once, a teenager famously found one in his lunch money and later sold it for 6 figures. Stories like these are why people keep searching. If you do happen to come across one of these coins, remember that condition matters. A heavily worn coin is still extremely valuable, but the difference between a fine condition and a mint state example can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's where grading comes into play. Professional grading companies can authenticate and assign a grade, giving buyers confidence and driving up the price at auction. One thing every collector should avoid is cleaning a coin like this. It may be tempting to shine it up, but cleaning destroys the original surfaces and can cut the value in half, sometimes more. Leaving the coin exactly as it is, even if it looks dull or dirty, is the best choice. Serious collectors and auction houses prefer untouched coins with natural patina. What makes this coin even more exciting is the impact it has on people. Many of you watching our Rare Coins channel are out there searching in every corner, digging through jars, boxes, old drawers, even estate sales and flea markets. Some of you buy coins online, some search rolls from the bank, and some inherit collections from relatives. We know what that hunt feels like because once, we were just like you, beginners chasing the dream, not knowing what to look for and wasting years missing treasures right under our noses. But eventually, rare coins like this changed our lives. And that's why we share everything we've learned with you. The 1943 copper penny is proof that the rarest treasures can hide in plain sight. Imagine pulling out a handful of change and realizing you're holding a coin worth more than $1 million. That's the kind of excitement that keeps collectors going year after year. And as we continue this series, we'll uncover many more coins just like this. Some worth tens of thousands, some worth hundreds of thousands, and yes, even those that cross the $1 million mark. We'll bring you the exact auction records, the stories behind the coins, and all the tips to help you find them. So stay with us on Rare Coin Collecting, because this is just the beginning of the journey. The 1943 penny teaches us one lesson above all. Never underestimate the power of a single coin. 1 cent could change your life forever. Sometimes when people think of rare pennies, they imagine only the famous $1 million coins like the 1943 copper or the 1909 SVDB. But here's the truth. Even a more common year like the 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny can hold surprising value depending on its condition, errors, and rarity in higher grades, and that's why collectors never overlook it. The 1945 penny has a fascinating history. World War II was still raging when these coins were struck. The U.S. Mint, which had already experimented with steel pennies in 1943 to save copper for the war effort, returned to producing pennies in 95% copper by 1944. But here's the twist. Much of that copper actually came from recycled wartime shell casings. So the 1944, 1945, and 1946 cents are often called shell case cents. A reminder that these coins carry the story of American history and their very metal. Imagine it, bullets and shells once used in battle, melted down and turned into pennies that people carried in their pockets every day. The Mint produced these pennies at 3 locations: Philadelphia, no mint mark; Denver, D, and San Francisco, S. Combined, the numbers were huge. Over 1 billion coins struck that year. At first glance, that might make you think, well, then they can't be valuable. But here's where condition, rarity, and errors come into play. In circulated condition, a 1945 penny may only be worth 5 to 15 cents. That's the kind of coin you'll often find in bulk wheat cent rolls. But uncirculated examples, and especially those with blazing original red color, can be worth much more. A top-graded 1945 penny, certified MS68 red by PCGS, sold at auction for $14,950. That's right. A coin that originally cost 1 cent, minted in the millions, became a 5-figure prize simply because of its condition and preservation. Collectors are always willing to pay huge premiums for coins with original luster and no flaws. And then we have the error coins. The 1945 wheat cent has several known varieties and striking errors that can turn a common coin into a rarity. Examples include doubled dies, repunched mint marks RPMs, off-center strikes, clipped planches, and die cracks. A 1945 penny with a strong repunched mint mark has sold for hundreds of dollars. An off-center strike in good condition can sell for $200 to $500, depending on how dramatic the error is. For collectors, these quirks are not flaws and they're treasures. But here's the important part. If you're searching through your change or coin rolls, you need to know how to identify these errors. That's where experience and education make the difference. Many collectors clean their coins when they find them, thinking it will make them more valuable. But that is the fastest way to ruin a coin. Cleaning destroys the natural surfaces, removes luster, and can slash the value by 50% or more. So if you find a 1945 penny, even if it looks dirty or dark, resist the urge to polish it. Keep it original and let a professional grader handle it. Speaking of grading, this is what separates ordinary coins from extraordinary ones. A 1945 penny in worn circulated condition may only fetch pocket change, but an MS-67 or MS-68 red example can sell for thousands. Grading companies like PCGS and NGC assign these grades, giving buyers confidence at auction and ensuring that sellers get top dollar. If you're serious about collecting or selling, grading is a must. Now let's talk about finding these coins. Many of you watching our Rare Coins channel are searching relentlessly in your old drawers, in inherited boxes, in estate sales, flea markets, coin rolls from banks, and even yard sales. Some of you even buy bulk wheat penny lots online, hoping to uncover a hidden gem. And you're right to keep looking. Because while the 1945 penny may not be as rare as the 1943 copper, high-grade examples and error coins are still hiding out there. People unknowingly toss them into coin jars every single day, and we understand the struggle. Once we were just like you, beginners, digging through every pile of coins we could get our hands on, not knowing exactly what to look for. We wasted a lot of time because we didn't have the knowledge. But as our journey continued, we discovered the secrets, the kinds of details that separate common pocket change from life-changing discoveries. And now, through this channel, we share them with you so you don't repeat the same mistakes. One of the most important lessons is this. Rarity isn't always about how many coins were minted. Sometimes it's about how many survive in pristine condition. That's why coins like the 1945 penny, with over 1 billion minted, can still command thousands at auction. A flawless survivor is a treasure no matter how common the date might seem. Think of it like this. There are plenty of vintage cars from the 1940s, but how many have survived in mint condition, with original paint and no rust? The same is true for coins. That's why collectors compete fiercely for the very best examples. The 1945 penny may not make headlines like the $1 million 1943 copper cent, but it's still a coin that carries history, potential, and real value. From shell case metal to repunched mint marks, from roll-searching finds to high-grade auction records, it offers something for collectors at every level. So the next time you're sorting through wheat pennies, don't skip over the 1945. Check for errors, check for luster, and most of all, check the condition. Because you never know when that 1-cent piece in your hand could turn into thousands of dollars. And remember, every rare coin you see in these videos was once just ordinary change in someone's pocket. That's the magic of this hobby. And as we always say here on Rare Coin Collecting, the treasure is out there waiting, maybe in your drawer, maybe in your coin jar, maybe in the very next roll you open. When you look at a 1946 Lincoln Wheat Penny, it may seem like just another common coin from the post-World War II era. After all, millions were struck, and most people wouldn't give it a second glance if they found one in a jar of old change. But like many coins, the story goes much deeper. Some of these ordinary-looking 1946 cents have sold for thousands of dollars. And the reason lies in rarity, condition, and hidden varieties that only sharp-eyed collectors notice. Let's start with the historical backdrop. In 1946, the United States was transitioning from wartime production back to peacetime. Just the year before, in 1945, the world had witnessed the end of World War II. The nation's economy was beginning to rebuild. Soldiers were returning home, and production at the U.S. mints was running at full capacity again. At the San Francisco Mint, more than 198 million pennies were struck in 1946, which is a huge number. That means, in general, the 1946S is not considered a rare date. But here's the twist. While most are worth just a few cents in circulated condition, the real value is in the details. High-grade examples, those that never circulated, kept fresh in rolls or bags, can bring serious premiums. Collectors particularly chase coins with strong red luster, since copper darkens over time. A brilliant red 1946S can sell for hundreds or even thousands depending on the grade. The record price for this coin is impressive. A PCGS MS67 Plus red example sold for $14,950 at auction. Imagine pulling a penny like that from a family coin jar. Even more fascinating are the varieties. The most famous is the 1946S over D mint mark, also called the SD variety. This happened when a Denver mint mark punch was accidentally impressed on a die, and then corrected with an S. On genuine examples, you can see traces of the underlying D beneath the S. These coins are rare, highly sought after, and can command thousands of dollars in mint state. Another sought-after variety is the double die obverse, where parts of the lettering show strong doubling. Collectors love these varieties because they transform an ordinary coin into a true rarity. Now let's talk about buying and selling. If you're shopping for a 1946S, the first step is knowing what you're after. Circulated examples are common and inexpensive, usually worth only a few cents. But if you're building a high-grade wheat penny collection, you'll want certified mint state coins. Always look for examples graded by trusted services like PCGS or NGC, since these guarantee authenticity and quality. For investors and serious collectors, those top-end red coins with minimal spots are the ones to chase. When it comes to selling, patience pays. If you happen to own a variety like the SD over mint mark or a blazing red gem, don't rush to unload it. Research past auction results, or better yet, consign with a major auction house that caters to advanced collectors. That's where the record-breaking prices happen. And a critical note for collectors: never clean your 1946S penny. Cleaning destroys the original surfaces and drastically reduces the value. A naturally toned coin, even with some dark spots, will almost always be worth more than one that's been polished or scrubbed. If you think your coin might be valuable, handle it carefully and, if possible, let a grading service make the call. So how do people actually find these treasures? While you're unlikely to find a 1946S in circulation today, wheat pennies still turn up in old change jars, coffee cans, and inherited collections. Estate sales and flea markets are also great hunting grounds. And for the more dedicated, searching through bank-wrapped rolls of cents, especially those put together decades ago, can still reveal hidden gems. There are countless stories of collectors discovering an SD over mint mark or a high-grade red example in the most unexpected places. The 1946S penny is a perfect example of why collectors never underestimate even the most common-looking coins. It teaches us that rarity isn't just about how many were minted, but about condition, survival, and unique varieties. While hundreds of millions were made, only a handful have survived in pristine, blazing red condition, and even fewer carry those exciting over mint mark errors that make collectors' hearts race. So the next time you spot a 1946S in an old jar or collection, take a closer look. You might just be holding an overlooked treasure worth far more than face value. And as always, that's why here on Rare Coins, we dig into the history, the secrets, and the market insights that help collectors like you know what to look for. Because as we've learned time and again, the rarest treasures often hide in plain sight. Imagine holding a penny in your hand that looks silver instead of copper, and then finding out it could be worth more than a luxury house. That's the reality of the legendary 1944 silver penny. This coin, which should have been struck in bronze, somehow came out of the mint on leftover steel planchets, and today, it ranks as one of the most famous and valuable mint errors in American coinage. To understand it, we need to step back to 1943. During World War II, copper was a critical material for making ammunition, so the U.S. Mint struck pennies out of zinc-coated steel. These 1943 steel cents were shiny and silver-colored when new, but they rusted easily and confused people who mistook them for dimes. Because of the complaints, the mint returned to the traditional bronze composition in 1944, melting down spent shell casings from the war effort to make the copper for cents. But here's where the magic happened. A few leftover steel planchets from 1943 got stuck in the presses at the mints. When production resumed in 1944 with the bronze alloy, these leftover steel blanks accidentally got struck with 1944 dies. The result? A true rarity, the 1944 steel penny. These coins look silver gray instead of copper brown, and they are dramatically different from every other 1944 cent. Only a tiny handful are known to exist. Estimates suggest fewer than 40 examples survive across all mints, and when one of these comes up for auction, the bidding goes wild. In fact, one of the highest auction results for a 1944 steel penny came in 2008 when a PCGS MS-66 example sold for $373,750. Another 1944 S steel cent sold for $408,000 in a heritage auction in 2021. These are staggering amounts for a penny that most people overlook. Now the big question for collectors: how do you know if you've found one? The easiest test is to use a magnet. Normal 1944 bronze pennies are not magnetic, but the 1944 steel cent is magnetic because of its steel core. If you ever come across a 1944 penny that looks gray or silver, and it sticks to a magnet, you may have struck gold in the form of steel. Of course, there are counterfeits, usually 1943, cents altered to look like 1944s, or copper 1944s plated to look like steel. That's why professional grading is essential. Speaking of grading, condition is everything. Most surviving 1944 steel cents are circulated, with wear from being spent unknowingly. Mint state examples, especially those with bright original luster, are the ones that command six-figure prices. If you think you have one, never try to clean it. Cleaning destroys surfaces and instantly slashes the value. Instead, submit it to PCGS or NGC, who can authenticate it and assign a grade. On the buying side, this is not a coin you casually pick up. Expect intense competition when one appears at auction. Collectors with deep pockets battle fiercely for them because they know how rarely these come to market. If you're lucky enough to own one and want to sell, the best strategy is to consign it with a major auction house like Heritage or Stack's Bowers. That's where the top buyers are, and that's how record-breaking sales happen. So where could you even hope to find a 1944 steel penny today? Some turn up in inherited collections when passed down from relatives who never knew their true value. Others have been discovered in bankrolls or old jars of pennies tucked away for decades. And believe it or not, a few have even been pulled from pocket change back when wheat pennies were still common in circulation. That's why collectors keep looking, because stories of lucky finds are what fuel the hobby. The 1944 silver penny is more than just a rare error. It's a symbol of how mistakes at the mint can create treasures that change lives. For most people, a penny is just a penny. But for a handful of collectors, one lucky coin turned into hundreds of thousands of dollars. And here on Rare Coins, that's why we dig into these legendary pieces, to show you what's out there, what to look for, and how even the smallest coin can hide the biggest surprises. So the next time you come across a 1944 penny, take a second look. If it's silver in color and sticks to a magnet, you could be holding a ticket to one of the greatest numismatic jackpots of all time. Sometimes a single year can make history in coin collecting, and 1922 was one of those years. Imagine finding an ordinary-looking wheat penny that could sell for thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars. That's the reality of the 1922 penny, a coin that seems common at first glance. But in certain forms, it is one of the rarest and most sought after in American coinage. Here's the backstory. In 1922, the only mint striking Lincoln cents was the Denver Mint. Philadelphia and San Francisco didn't produce any that year, which makes 1922 unique right away. Every authentic 1922 cent should bear the D mint mark for Denver, but the Denver Mint had serious die wear problems. In some cases, the mint mark was so weak that it appeared faint or nearly invisible. And in one dramatic error, entire dies were overpolished, completely removing the mint mark. These coins became famous as the 1922 no-D pennies. Now here's where it gets exciting. A genuine 1922 no-D penny is worth a fortune. Collectors prize them because they are essentially the only Lincoln cents from 1922 that look like they were struck without a mint mark. At auction, they've achieved jaw-dropping prices. For example, a 1922 no-D strong reverse, graded PCGS MS65 red-brown, sold for $92,000 at heritage auctions. Even circulated examples can fetch thousands. One in decent fine condition sold for over $2,500. But here's the catch. Many counterfeits exist. People sometimes remove the D, mint mark, from a normal 1922 D to fake the rare variety. That's why grading and authentication are so important. PCGS and NGC both certify 1922 no-D cents, and the difference between a genuine error and an altered coin is literally the difference between pocket change and life-changing money. So what about condition? As with all coins, the higher the grade, the higher the value. Most 1922 cents are well worn from circulation, but when you find one with sharp details, crisp wheat stalks on the reverse, and strong lettering, the value skyrockets. Mint state examples of the no-D variety are unbelievably rare and bring six-figure sums. If you're searching for one of these coins, where should you look? Start with old wheat penny rolls, jars of change, or collections handed down through family. Some collectors discovered their 1922 treasures in boxes, hidden away for decades. Estate sales, flea markets, and even bank-wrapped rolls of pennies can occasionally yield surprises. Remember, every 1922 cent came out of Denver, so when you see one without a clear D, you might have something special. Now let's talk buying and selling. If you're looking to buy, make sure you work only with trusted dealers or auction houses. Avoid raw, uncertified no-D coins on places like eBay unless you're an expert. Too many are fakes. If you're lucky enough to own one and want to sell, consigning it with a top auction house will get you the best results, because that's where serious collectors compete. And a quick but important reminder, never clean these coins. Cleaning destroys original surfaces and drastically lowers value. Collectors want originality even if the coin shows wear. The 1922 penny, especially the no-D variety, is a perfect example of how minting errors and quirks of history can create numismatic legends. What should have been just another wheat penny year turned into one of the greatest rarities in U.S. coinage. And here on Rare Coins, we love uncovering these stories because they remind us that the next life-changing discovery might be sitting in your pocket or hiding in an old box of coins in your family's attic. So keep looking, because if you stumble across a 1922 no-D penny, you're not just holding a coin, you're holding a piece of history worth thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars. Some coins are so famous that even people who don't collect coins have heard of them. And in the 1943 silver penny is exactly that kind of coin. Imagine rummaging through an old jar of pennies, spotting a silvery-looking coin, and suddenly realizing you might be holding something worth thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's the magic of the 1943 penny. Here's the story. During World War II, the United States Mint faced a copper shortage. Copper was desperately needed for ammunition and wartime supplies. So in 1943, the Mint switched the penny to a zinc-coated steel planchet. That's why these coins look silver, even though they're not made of precious metal. Over 1 billion of these steel cents were struck across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. So the majority of 1943 silver pennies are actually quite common, often worth just a few cents in circulated condition. But here's where things get exciting. A small number of mistakes slipped through the cracks. Some leftover copper planchets from 1942 were accidentally fed into the presses, creating the legendary 1943 copper penny. These are among the most valuable error coins in U.S. history. In fact, one 1943 copper penny from Philadelphia, graded MS62 brown, sold for $372,000 at heritage auctions. Another example reportedly sold privately for over $1.7 million. That's right. A single penny struck by mistake is worth more than a house. But even the steel versions can bring surprising money in high grades. Most circulated ones are worth under $1, but in mint state, especially with full luster and no rust spots, values climb quickly. A top-graded 1943 steel cent in MS68 sold for over $10,000. Collectors pay big premiums for clean, fully struck examples because most of these coins suffered from weak strikes and corrosion over the years. So how can you tell if you've got something special? First, if your 1943 penny sticks to a magnet, it's the common steel cent. If it doesn't stick, you might have a copper plancher error, and that's when you should get excited. Of course, there are fakes too. Some people copper plate the steel pennies to trick buyers, or they alter dates like 1948 to look like 1943. That's why authentication by a professional grading service such as PCGS or NGC is absolutely essential. Collectors love the 1943 pennies because they connect directly to American history. They're a symbol of wartime sacrifice and innovation. Holding one in your hand feels like holding a piece of World War II itself. And when you consider the ultra-rare copper errors, the thrill of discovery is irresistible. Every time someone sorts through an old penny jar or bankroll, there's that dream of spotting the impossible, a real 1943 copper cent. Now let's talk buying and selling. If you're buying steel cents, look for ones in pristine condition, bright, fully lustrous, and without corrosion. Even though they're common, high-grade pieces make a nice addition to any collection. If you're buying or hoping to sell a 1943 copper cent, always go through a trusted auction house. The serious buyers are there, and that's where the biggest prices are realized. A quick word of advice: never try to clean these coins. Steel cents especially are fragile. Cleaning strips their zinc coating and causes rust to set in. Collectors prefer natural, untouched surfaces, even if the coin has darkened a bit over the years. And as for finding these coins, steel cents show up all the time in old change jars, rolls, and estate collections. Many families saved them simply because they look different, which means countless 1943 pennies are still hiding in drawers, boxes, and piggy banks across the country. The copper versions are incredibly rare, but every now and then, a new one turns up, proving that treasure is still out there. The 1943 silver penny is one of those coins that captures the imagination. It might be common, it might be rare, but either way it tells a story of a nation at war and a mint doing whatever it could to support the effort. And here on Rare Coins, we'll keep chasing down these incredible stories and reminding you that the next legendary coin could still be waiting in your very own pocket change. Have you ever held a coin that feels like it survived through the toughest chapters of history? The 1917 Lincoln penny is one of those coins. It comes from an era when the world was in turmoil, with World War I raging overseas, and yet here in America, the mint was quietly striking pennies that would go on to become treasures in the eyes of collectors a century later. At first glance, a 1917 penny might not look like much, after all. It's just a simple wheat cent made of bronze. But don't let appearances fool you. Depending on condition, mint mark, and rarity, this little copper coin can fetch serious money. Most circulated examples you'll find in old jars or change. Boxes are worth under $1. But when you look at pristine, uncirculated coins, the story changes completely. In fact, a 1917 Lincoln cent graded MS67 Plus read by PCGS sold for an astounding $20,000 at heritage auctions. Think about that. A penny that originally bought a stick of gum sold for more than the price of a luxury car. The history here is powerful. Designed by Victor David Brenner, the Lincoln cent had only been in circulation for 8 years. When the 1917 pennies were struck, the country was entering World War I, and coins like this were being carried in the pockets of soldiers, factory workers, and everyday families trying to get by. These pennies are living witnesses to one of the most dramatic periods of the 20th century. Now let's talk about mint marks. The 1917 penny was struck in Philadelphia. No mint mark. Denver D and San Francisco S. The Philadelphia coins are the most common, while the 1917 S is tougher to find in high grades, and the 1917 D sits in between. Collectors love hunting for mint-marked coins because the differences in rarity and value can be dramatic. For example, a 1917 S penny in average condition might sell for just a few dollars, but in mint state with blazing red color, it can soar into the tens of thousands. When it comes to grading, eye appeal is everything. Collectors pay the most for coins that still have full red color, the same fiery tone they had the day they left the mint. Most 1917 pennies have turned brown over time, which is natural, but the rare survivors with original red luster are the ones that bring jaw-dropping prices at auction. That's why third-party grading from PCGS or NGC is so critical. Buyers want to know exactly what they're paying for, and grading guarantees both authenticity and quality. Now, a word of warning: do not clean your 1917 penny. Cleaning leaves harsh marks, destroys the natural surfaces, and will instantly cut the value of the coin in half, if not worse. Collectors would rather own a naturally aged, even slightly dirty coin than a shiny, damaged one. If you find one, leave it exactly as it is and let the experts handle it. Buying and selling these coins can be incredibly rewarding. If you're buying, always check for strong details on Lincoln's hair and the wheat. Stalks on the reverse. Those are the first areas to wear down. If you're selling, consider using a trusted auction, house or online, platform with coin collecting communities. That's where the serious bidders are. And that's how coins like the $120,000 record breaker found their new homes. And what about finding one? Believe it or not, 1917 pennies still show up in the wild. People discover them in inherited collections, estate sales, old penny jars, and even tucked away in family keepsake boxes. Once in a while, a sharp-eyed collector will even spot one in a roll of wheat pennies. The thrill of discovery is real, and part of the reason so many people fall in love with rare coin hunting. When you look at the 1917 penny, you're not just looking at a piece of copper. You're holding a fragment of American history, struck during one of the most turbulent times of the modern era. And for collectors, it's not just about the value, it's about the story, the hunt, and the chance that the next coin you pull from an old box might be worth thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Imagine holding a coin struck in the middle of World War II, a time when copper was so precious that the U.S. Mint had to rethink what pennies were even made of. That's exactly what happened in 1943. And today, we're talking about the 1943 Lincoln Wheat Penny, minted in San Francisco. This is a coin that at first glance may look ordinary. A gray, steel cent. But when you learn its story, you'll see why collectors chase it, and why some examples have sold for tens of thousands of dollars. The story begins with wartime shortages. Copper was desperately needed for ammunition and military equipment, so the U.S. Mint switched the penny from its traditional bronze composition to a zinc-coated steel. That's why all 1943 pennies, including the 1943 S, appear silver in color. The S mint mark under the date shows it came from San Francisco, where fewer were struck compared to Philadelphia. In fact, the San Francisco Mint produced around 191 million of these coins. That sounds like a lot, but compared to how many have survived in top condition, the numbers drop sharply. And here's the key. Most of these steel pennies rusted, corroded, or were damaged in circulation. They stuck to magnets. People thought they were dimes, and many ended up in junk drawers or tossed aside. That makes high-grade examples from San Francisco extremely desirable today. So how much can this little coin be worth? Well, circulated examples might sell for just a few dollars, but in uncirculated condition the story changes. In MS-67 grade with red surfaces, one 1943 penny sold for $138,000 at a heritage auction. Yes, that's 6 figures for a single penny. Even in MS-66 condition, these coins can bring thousands. But there's another twist. Some 1943 pennies were accidentally struck on copper planchets, left over from 1942. These are among the rarest U.S. coins in existence. Only a handful have been confirmed, and one sold for over $1 million. That's why every collector checks their 1943 pennies carefully, because you never know if you've got one of those legendary mistakes hiding in plain sight. Now let's talk about collecting strategy. If you're searching for a 1943 look in old coin jars, rolls of wheat cents, antique shops, or family collections that haven't been touched in decades. Many people who hoarded coins during the war years passed them down, and they're waiting to be rediscovered. Pawn shops, flea markets, and estate sales can also be gold mines for finds like this. When it comes to buying, be cautious, because the 1943 steel penny looks so different from the normal bronze cents. It's a target for counterfeiting. Some scammers plate them with copper to trick beginners into thinking they're the $1 million copper variety. Always test with a magnet. genuine 1943 steel cent stick, while the copper error will not. If you believe you found a rare error, get it graded immediately by PCGS or NGC. And grading matters a lot here. The difference between an MS-65 and MS-67 could be tens of thousands of dollars. Professional grading not only authenticates your coin but also maximizes its value when you go to sell. Remember, collectors pay for peace of mind. Cleaning, however, is the one mistake that destroys value. The zinc coating on 1943 cents is very delicate. If you try to polish or scrub it, you'll leave scratches or remove the plating entirely. Collectors call that details grade. And it can cut the value by 90% or more. So resist the temptation. Let your coin be as it is, even if it looks dull. Selling is another strategy worth thinking about. If you have a top-grade coin, auctions like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, or Great Collections are the best platforms to reach serious buyers. Lower-grade coins can be sold at local coin shops, shows, or even online marketplaces, but always know the real value before you sell. Too many people let rare coins slip away for pennies on the dollar. And here's something I want you to remember. Once upon a time, collectors like us were just like many of you watching, digging through rolls, searching through drawers, hoping for a treasure. And sometimes the discoveries truly change your life. That's why we're bringing you this rare coin series to share the secrets we wish we had known earlier. So whether you're hunting for that million-dollar copper error or simply building a set of wartime steel cents, the 1943 Lincoln Wheat Penny is a must-know coin. Its history, rarity, and potential value make it one of the most exciting finds in U.S. numismatics. Stay tuned, because we're covering every important coin in this series, from the most common to the ones worth millions. And yes, we'll reveal the exact prices these treasures have sold for at auction, so you'll know exactly what to look for.